The story of river sand and gravel really started many thousands of years ago in the Ice Age. Retreating glaciers left mountains and valleys. They also left virgin sand and gravel deposits beneath the newborn rivers. The beautiful Ohio, storied in song and fable, placed an indelible imprint on the pages of American history. Its broad bosom carried the flatboats and rafts of the pioneers who opened up the West. The Ohio River still helps build America. Each year, giant sand diggers take from 3 to 4 million tons of sand and gravel from this river in the Pittsburgh district alone. Many things happen to the material from the time it leaves the river bottom until it reaches the user. It must be processed by a dredge, a complete self-contained floating factory. The only way to reach a sand digger is by boat. 2 visitors are approaching now. One, an old hand at the sand and gravel business, and the other, a youngster, just learning the ropes, coming to look over the complete operation. I don't suppose they'll mind if we look over their shoulders. As they reach the dredge, our visitors are greeted by the digger captain. He's proud of his dredge, happy to show off its fine points. The digging ladder is the heart of the dredge. It digs the material the dredge processes. This ladder can reach 50 feet down into the river, and it can work as it is lowered. The dredge can be placed just where the captain wants it, within dredging areas designated by the United States Army Corps of Engineers. An experienced dredge captain knows where to dig. Before the ladder ever starts down, the captain is fairly sure what type of material will come up. That's part of his job. He must know the river and what lies beneath it. This modern floating plant is a far cry from the days of old, when raw sand was shoveled right from the river into horse-drawn wagons and hauled direct to the user without any treatment at all. There are 81 of these massive buckets on an endless chain. Each one weighs over 900 pounds, and each can hold 4 cubic feet of raw material. About 30 buckets discharge their load every minute. That's 1 every 2 seconds. If this material were dumped directly into 50-ton railroad cars, instead of being processed, 1 car could be loaded every 8 minutes. Material larger than 4 1/2 inches is bypassed back into the river. Everything smaller than that is processed. Despite the terrific pounding these buckets take, they have an average life of 10 years. 150 horsepower is required just to keep this ladder and a similar elevating ladder turning. These buckets dump into a hopper, where elevator buckets pick up the material and carry it to the top of the dredge. The operation of the elevator is timed so that it can take the full production of the digging ladder. Elevator buckets are the same size as the dredging buckets, but they do no digging. They hoist material to the top of the dredge, where it starts its downward flow that ends when it is loaded for shipment. Violent vibration and high-pressure water jets are the secret of clean sand and gravel. Large and powerful vibrating screens jar loose the dirt and soft clay particles. The flood of water flushes them away, leaving the product clean and ready for grading. This conveyor belt carries oversized gravel to the crusher. After crushing, the gravel is again washed and graded. Then it moves by conveyor belt to waiting barges. Natural gravel is screened and scrubbed also before passing direct to the barges. 2 barges can be loaded with gravel at the same time, each being loaded with a different size. To fill one of these barges, which hold about 550 tons, takes only 3 hours. When the barge is loaded, it will be pulled from beneath the conveyor belts by cables and capstans. An empty will take its place, and the loading continue. Notice the material. It has the right proportions of all sizes for a good mixture. We've seen gravel produced. Now let's move to the other side of the dredge, where sand and shot gravel are processed. Now shot, a real small gravel, and sand get their baths. A dredge uses lots of water. In a day, this dredge pumps and uses more than 1 million gallons. That's a mighty big drink. Our captain says that to get first-hand information on shot, you should take a handful. And he's right. Notice how clean the material is. It doesn't stain or even stick to the hand. But this isn't surprising. It's a quality standard. Sand in its wet state goes to a settling tank, which acts as a receiving hopper. These buckets are lifting sand from that tank. The process is complete now, the sand passing to a chute for loading direct to a barge. Here it pours from a chute, while shot falls from a conveyor belt. Moisture that comes down the chute with the sand drains back to the river as the sand is piled. Remember, there are 2 barges being loaded with gravel on the other side of the dredge. And with 2 loading here, that means 4 barges in all being loaded simultaneously. From 4,000 to 5,000 tons of sand and gravel each working day. This operation continues from 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. Our guest is curious. He wants to know more about the grading of sand. He also wants to see how quickly it dries after it's loaded. This pile of sand was at the bottom of the river less than an hour ago. Our friend digs deep. Burrows is a better word. Notice that the sand is dry, sharp, and well graded. The difference in color between the piles of sand is quite noticeable. The last pile loaded, the one on the right, is darker than the other. As sand dries out, it appears lighter in color. It will be dry when it reaches market. We've seen sand and gravel produced, but transportation and distribution are an important part of this industry also. Here's a towboat easing in to pick up its tow, which is made fast with a clever arrangement of wire, ropes, and ratchets. A capstan will tighten up the wire, you see, and towboat and tow will become as one, a single rigid unit. The captain of the Keystone welcomes back aboard our guests who are going to ride from East Liverpool, Ohio, to Pittsburgh. The Keystone is one of the many boats that moves sand and gravel to the Pittsburgh district. This modern river towboat was built in 1945. Her crew of 15 live aboard for 10 days and then have 5 days off. Though they make a 10-day voyage and travel hundreds of miles, they are never far from shore. The Keystone, with 8 barges, has moved several miles upriver from the point where our guests got aboard. Another digger is working here and has a 9th barge loaded and ready for us. 9 barges make an efficient Ohio River tow, one that will pass through the locks easily and quickly. See how that barge slips into position, just like a toy block fitting into a box. The deckhands hurry to make it fast, first with rope, later with wire and ratchets. Pickups are relatively quick. The towboat pauses only for a few minutes because the crew can tighten up the tow while underway. Now the tow is complete. When the mate waves his arms from the head of the tow, we're off to Pittsburgh. The 9 barge loads you see here will be dropped off at 7 different distributing plants in the Pittsburgh district. Here's what 5,000 tons of sand and gravel look like from the front. Remember, each of the 9 barges carries about a 550-ton load. The total would fill 90 railroad cars, make a mighty long train. Our boat is running slowly now because it's approaching a lock. The tow is nosing into the lock at Montgomery Dam, the second of 4 locks she must pass through to reach Pittsburgh. The United States Army Corps of Engineers operate the locks on a 24-hour basis. This lock makes the largest lift at one time, 19 feet plus. Our boat and tow will be raised a total of 47 feet on our journey from the dredge to the Pittsburgh district. Notice the height of the steamer leaving the lock as we enter. That's how high this tow will go. It's easy to visualize this raising of the tow if you place a cake of floating soap in a wash basin and turn on the faucet. As water fills the basin, the soap is raised. It stays on top of the water. Pull the plug and the bar of soap is lowered. Notice the water inching our tow upward. See how it covers that bit in the lock wall? We rise as the water level rises. We're all the way up now, and the gates swing open, and we've been in the lock less than half an hour. When the lockman lets go the last line, we are clear. We start out of the lock under a slow bell and soon move our tow upstream at about 5 miles per hour. We'll keep traveling through the night and arrive in the Pittsburgh district in the morning. While we were sleeping, the Keystone stopped during the night and dropped off several barges here. This is one of the largest carload distributing centers for sand and gravel in the district. Sand and gravel are shipped by rail to off-river points within a 100-mile radius. About 20 bites of this clamshell bucket will load a rail car. From river barge to overhead bins to trucks, movement is continuous. This distribution plant is typical of many that dot the district. We were just getting awake this morning when the Keystone approached this plant and dropped off these barges before daybreak. This is the largest sand and gravel distribution plant in the Pittsburgh area, located close to the heart of the Golden Triangle. Buckets like this one clam from the barges and place sand and gravel in storage. The track on which this crane rides is nearly 200 feet long, so the operator can move just where he wants to. He can keep a barge clean with accurate movements of this massive bucket and unload it in the same time it took to fill it, about 3 hours. There's a lot of storage capacity at this plant, and it's needed to meet sudden demand. From storage piles, the crane clams sand and dumps it into a hopper. This starts the material on its trip through the plant. From the hopper, sand or gravel drops to a moving conveyor belt for a long ride uphill. The largest sand and gravel conveyor belt in western Pennsylvania is housed within this structure. The belt is 260 feet long and carries material over 6 railroad tracks to the plant proper. This belt is a safety measure, eliminating the need for trucks making frequent crossings of the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad at grade. This belt takes material from the inclined conveyor belt and hurries it along to way hoppers. The way hoppers are built over driveways so that trucks can pull up beneath them for gravity loading. Here's sand pouring into truck storage hoppers, the last stop before it leaves the plant. You'll notice that the sand is clean and dry. It flows smoothly. 8 different kinds of material are stored in different bins in this area. Each kind is handled just as the sand is. A goodly percentage of river sand and gravel leaves this plant in the form of ready mixed concrete. Here we see a truck being charged. Cement, sand, and gravel are weighed in batches, then dumped into the truck's mixer. Water for the mix is carried in that square tank in back of the cab. Customers specify just what mix they want, how much cement, how much sand, and how much gravel, and instructions are followed to the letter when the truck is charged. Mixer trucks are an old story to Pittsburghers. Pittsburgh was the first city east of the Rockies to have mixer truck service. That was back in 1927. At the yard office, the driver gets clearance and is checked out. These mixer trucks go almost anywhere. You often see them in city traffic. One batch may be for a downtown job, the next an isolated area where the truck practically has to make its own roadway. The contractor who will receive this particular batch has his forms ready and waiting. When he telephoned his order, he mentioned the time he would like delivery. Tight scheduling. Delivering concrete just when it is needed greatly enhances the value of ready mixed concrete service. This batch will soon be a sidewalk in one of Pittsburgh's suburbs. The driver, with his truck in position for unloading, starts his mixer mechanism and then adds water to the batch. In a few minutes, the concrete will be ready for pouring. When the mixer door is opened, the concrete slides out like coal from a chute. The entire load is placed in a very few minutes. The contractor's men will trowel and smooth the concrete, and someone else has a brand new sidewalk. The old-fashioned back-breaking hand mixing of yesterday is completely eliminated. On larger jobs, where great quantities of concrete are needed, delivery is scheduled so that the flow of concrete to forms is almost continuous. After the mixing compartment is emptied, the driver will add water to the chamber and let his mixer run while he drives back to the plant. And by the time he gets there, the chamber will be washed clean, for each new batch of concrete must go into a clean truck. This truck can carry almost 12,000 pounds of material per trip. Sand and gravel go into concrete blocks at this plant and are stored outdoors for curing. Certainly are a lot of home and building foundations in that pile. Here's a new industry to the Pittsburgh district. Sturdy, long-lived concrete pipe is in great demand nowadays. It's being used for drainage projects everywhere. This plant produces and handles pipe by up-to-date methods. River sand and gravel make fine bridges and highways. Irwin Bridge and Route 30 carry 4-lane traffic. All traffic to and from the famous Pennsylvania Turnpike, America's dream highway, uses Route 30 at Irwin Interchange. This is a river sand and gravel highway. The George Westinghouse Bridge is one of the largest concrete highway spans in the world. Built by Allegheny County in 1930 and 31, river sand and gravel played their part. This is Washington Road near Mount Lebanon. It was built in 2 sections, the first completed in 1937, the second in 1941. Notice how smooth the road is? The cameraman who made this picture was riding in an automobile traveling at 50 miles per hour. Route 88, the Ohio River Boulevard, is also a river sand and gravel highway. When Pittsburgh's waterfront face was lifted, river sand and gravel helped do that job. Here's the Monongahela Wharf and parking area. River floods have not harmed this wharf. A world-famous landmark rests on caisson foundations of river sand and gravel. The University of Pittsburgh's Cathedral of Learning, the tallest school structure in America. Day in and day out, around the clock and around the calendar, river sand and gravel move to market. New roads, new homes, and new buildings all make for a finer, more beautiful place in which to live and work. River sand and gravel help build the foundations for a brighter future for everyone.